next up, we have Brandon Crooms, Race, Sports, and Faith, the Identity Crisis of the Black Christian Student Athlete.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing? I normally like to take the mic and walk, but I am recovering from a knee injury right now, so if you could bear with me. Jason, I'm going to need some help going to the next slide. Is okay? Okay. All right. Again, my name is Brandon Crooms. I am a PhD candidate. Can we start off with the title slide? Yes. I am a PhD candidate from here, the University of Texas at Austin. I am currently working on my dissertation, which involves the intersection of Christian faith, athletic identity, and racial identity in black male adolescent student athletes. While I'm currently collecting data, I found some things that was interesting to me. And like we know that sports is like a microcosm of life, I saw that there was a lot of connection dealing with faith and race, especially the way the political climate is today. Throughout the whole summit, we know that there is a tug in identity, especially when it comes to race. There's a tug and a pull of sport as well, but I'm interested in knowing, particularly with the Christian faith, how does that interact with those type of identities? Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So I want to start off with a little bit of history, okay? So we know that the way the country, the foundation of the country, dealing with slavery, Christianity and religion was used to justify the abuse of the black body and the slavery, pretty much. Even to today, as it relates to in the past, white supremacy, there's a connection with nationalism, patriotism, and with Christianity. What I've also found interesting through my research that I got a little deeper with the theology of slave masters and Christianity and what they thought the use of the black body. So the black body was not, it was dehumanized, but it was also seen as something that is inferior. They would use evangelism to basically, for salvation reasons, but because of the black body and its association with black being wicked, maybe their soul can eventually go to heaven. But as far as their black body, they are treated in such a way that they're supposed to be governed and controlled by white slave masters. So we see that there's biblical interpretation that justify racial hierarchies and racial institutions, but also we see that because in the result of such a religious association with racism, there's systemic oppression as a result of it, even to this day. Next slide, please. So this, I just wanted to show this really quickly. This is just an illustration of different reasons and ideologies to justify the supremacy of white Americans and why they use Christianity to enslave African slaves. If we take a look at the social reasons, the second bullet, it says slavery is God's means of protecting and providing for an inferior race. The curse of Ham in Genesis 9:25, or even in the punishment of Cain in Genesis chapter 4, verse 12. So they will interpret the Bible in a way to justify the reason why they are the chosen one. They're the chosen one to be controlled, to use to control other black bodies. Next slide. So we know that W. Du Bois, he talked a lot about double consciousness, and that is pretty much related to identity and the black experience. Particularly with the black experience, it's not just me walking around and I just aware of myself, but it's being conscious of how people view me. So it's a double consciousness, being aware how others view me and how I perceive myself. So with that lens, I would like to look at the intersection of racial identity, athletic identity, and Christian identity. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, my dissertation It is a mixed method. I did surveys and I also did interviews. But for this presentation, I want to highlight particularly a few of the student athletes and examine pretty much and analyze the impact of systemic racism on their identity development. I want to use their experiences and perspectives to highlight and develop a general understanding of the impact of the intersection of race and religion in the lives of black male student athletes. Next slide. All right, so bear with me. I know these are paragraphs, but I want us to particularly focus on the red. Okay. So the first sentence, it says, "My faith played a role in so many ways in keeping me, one, grounded, giving me a sense of who I am, regardless of who sees who I am or who doesn't see who I am, or who tries to lessen who I am, or in that sort." We see right here that there's a security. There's a security in a trust in a higher power, in God. Also, I already know who I am because of my faith and because what God has told me and what God has said about me. So it wasn't necessarily this is what I know, but this is real to me. I can identify with this. So there's a type of relationship and a connection with his faith. And lastly, regardless of football, regardless of the classroom, at the end of this life, none of that is taken with us. Just what we do here on earth. So he recognized and realized that life is much more than just playing football. That he feels obligated to do something else that's greater and more aligned with his higher purpose or higher calling. Next slide, please. So I wanted to bring up a little what the research says. We know that the black church is closely tied to the African American experience. So what I mean by that is pretty much if you are not connected with a religious belief, somebody in your family may be. Somebody's aunt, somebody's grandma, somebody's mother. For an example, okay? God is good all the what? And all the time, God is what? I'm blessed and highly what? The devil is you see what I'm saying? It's deeply rooted in the culture and experience. The way Christianity was interpreted historically was more so it wasn't just salvation spiritually, but African Americans saw hope and salvation in political, economic, social. So it was much more than just me as an individual person, but we saw God through community. Also, there was a relationship, as I mentioned before, that looked more so of support, spiritual guidance, and meaning in life. It was used as coping mechanism. Prayer is used as an example. All right, next slide. So this student athlete pretty much, his church helped him see the world a little differently. It contributed to how he viewed his life and life in general. How I do that when everything is kind of sucked right now? Like, how do I do that? And so I made a commitment to myself. I was diving deeper. I have to dive deeper because if I don't, I'm losing everything. In addition to football, like I told myself, I can get hurt tomorrow. I could be in the car tomorrow and never play football again. But if I don't get my head right, I ain't going to never be right. So I kind of had to shift my identity, shift my focus. So with his faith, allow him to step out of that athletic identity and see that all that could be gone later on. But because he saw that faith was important to him, that he wanted to go deeper. He wanted to ask more questions about his faith. Next slide, please. So we pretty much know about athletic identity, particularly with adolescence. It's a period of major transitions and identity construction. That's the time when they ask, who am I? Who am I in this social context? And that's typically African Americans have a stronger sense of identity in sport, and is susceptible to loss of identity. Next slide, please. And lastly, this particular student athlete basically explaining his experience with racism and the fact that he's been socialized through experiences and through other people of what it means to be black. In this case, he thought that he had to work harder because people wanted him to fail. Mindful that people are looking for us to fail and looking for us to fall and to stumble. It's definitely in the forefront of your mind. So he's conscious in his back of his mind. He knows that he has to do something extra. It was his motivation. Next slide, please. So racial socialization, as I mentioned before, is used to, in a predominantly African-American community, is used as to uplift the culture. It's used to protect them from prejudice or racism and prejudice biases. It's used as spirituality and religion is used as support and resilience and perseverance. Not only that, but it's an opportunity for them to connect and to build relationships. Next slide. And I want to end with a discussion and the implications. I did see that there is a level of double consciousness, that there is a problem, and that they're trying to find a way to navigate these different identities. So what can we do? We can have consultation strategies that develop and promote integrative identities. Instead of it being separated, instead of being fragmented, what ways can we bring these identities together so that they can actually flourish and encourage and promote well-being? Individual faith and faith community can provide support in dealing with unique psychosocial issues related to sport, race, and sport, and partner and collaborate with religious mentors to meet the spiritual needs of student athletes. If they have a relationship with their athletes, they know the needs of their spiritual needs. So why not we come together and see how we can both work together? And what I also saw that religious faith can foster social emotional skills, as I mentioned before, resilience, perseverance, all these emotional skills that can actually help with academic performance and athletic performance. How can we bring that and teach them how to translate that even on the court or on the field? Thank you. Next.